You're out here trying to hold everyone else accountable. Are you keeping your promises? They could tell you that you messed up 80 jillion times. It's not going to matter to you because you don't respect them. You know what? Someone needs to do a study on that because I want to know like what the linkage is between poverty and people pleasing. Put a pin in that. What does it, cousins? This is Jolyn GC, co-creator and co-producer of the Come Up series, and welcome to another episode of Wealth Rituals Season 3. Today, we are going to be discussing the principle, thou shalt be impeccable with thy word. In our modern age, promises can sometimes seem cheap, but history has shown, especially in the business and financial sectors, that trust built on solid promises can be a person's most valuable asset. Okay, so how do we know when this principle is not working? Well, there's about 5 ways you know that this principle is not currently operating in your life. Number 1, if you are experiencing any stress from broken promises leading to both like any emotional or financial loss, this principle is not operating in your life currently. If you have like a sinking feeling of betrayal, you suspect someone's gonna betray you or something along those lines, especially in the context of a trusted financial or business partnership. And if that partner goes back on their word, like they said one thing to you, but that's not how it played out, this principle is not operating. 3, the ripple effect. How one's reputation suffers in wider circles. So literally think about a pebble thrown in the water and then you see that ripple effect, and think of that as like your reputation. If you are not keeping your word, that can have substantial impact on relationships in the wider circle of your life, all based on unkept promises. The internal turmoil stemming from being unable to meet one's own promises. So meanwhile, you're out here trying to hold everyone else accountable. Are you keeping your promises? And if you're not, that's also an indication that it's not working, that principle is not currently operating in your life. And then finally, the challenge of reestablishing trust and rebuilding professional relationships. Once that trust is broken, especially in a professional setting, and even more so when we're dealing with something like wealth building, we already know that money and relationships can sometimes lead to drama, if you will, especially with family members. That's not my testimony, that's not my story, but you know, that might be yours. But the challenge of reestablishing trust and rebuilding professional relationships really is something to take into consideration when you're thinking through like, okay, is this principle operating in my life? So that's 5 things that you can look at to see where you're at when it comes to that particular principle. Now, let's talk about some action steps when it comes to creating a wealth ritual. Step 1, begin with keeping your word to yourself before you start trying to keep words to others. Start with yourself. Are you keeping your word to yourself? If you said that you were going to invest 70% of your income and only have 30% go to expenses, if that's looking like a 60-40, a 50-50, or anything other than what you said, first start with your ability to keep your word to yourself. And let me just interject right here, because there is a difference between keeping your word, changing your mind, and then honoring your word. So the difference or the gap is when you keep your word and you honor your word. When you have to honor your word is usually when you change your mind. So that's essentially changing what you said initially. So just because you said something doesn't mean you can't change your mind. We're human. Sometimes minds change. If that's the case, then you just reestablish what that word is. So you can keep your word, you can change your mind, and you can honor your word. Okay? Now, if you really want to nerd out on this, you want to document and revisit those promises. So I'm talking spreadsheets, I'm talking Word docs, PDFs, what have you, paper and pen. Write out what your word is and then revisit it to make sure that you're actually doing what you say and say what you do. Oh, right now, develop the ability to say no, because saying no is better than not keeping your word. If you know you can't do it, do not be a people pleaser. When it comes to wealth building, we do not have time to be out here pleasing people. This is about building your wealth journey. Is about building wealth. So you definitely don't want to get caught up in people pleasing. We don't have time. Like, people pleasing, it may even be that, you know what, someone needs to do a study on that, because I want to know like what the linkage is between poverty and people pleasing. Put a pin in that. Create an accountability partnership or group. Have people that you trust, that know you and know what you're about, who can hold you accountable. Make sure you respect that person, because if you don't respect them, they could tell you that you messed up 80 jillion times. It's not going to matter to you because you don't respect them. So find someone or a group of people who you can all hold each other accountable to one another, and make sure that you have documentation of what the actual word is so that you can go back and reflect. And then 5, mentorship again. You want to engage in mentorship. You want to learn from those who have maintained their word. Like, think about the person that you find to be like the most trustworthy, or someone who always keeps their word, and they operate at a level of excellence that is admirable. Ask that person to be your mentor when it comes to keeping your word. And there may be room for some accountability partnerships within that relationship as well, but you definitely want to make sure that you have other people outside of your peer group who can hold you accountable.
So question number 1. Can you share a pivotal moment in your financial journey that was a direct result of you keeping your word or promise? Yes. So when I graduated college, I had got this paid internship, and after like 6 months, I negotiated my way into a full-time job. And that full-time job at the time was my first career out of college, and it was paying $24,000 a year. And that was before taxes. And my goal was to move to California with our group. But before I do, I wanted to save up $10,000. So when I move out there, I have some wiggle room and some cushion. So I knew in order to do that on that type of salary, I had to be severely disciplined, make some sacrifices so I can reach that goal. So I wasn't eating out like that. I wasn't partying like that. I wasn't buying clothes. All I was doing was stacking my money and doing a little bit of side freelance work so I can get to that goal. And after like a year and some change, I got it, and we moved to California. So me being impeccable with my word and dedicated to the goal that I wanted to hit helped me save $10,000 from a $24,000 salary, which is amazing.
That's phenomenal. That's absolutely phenomenal. That's a level of discipline that I strive to be at one day.
Question 2. How has being impeccable with your word influenced your reputation in the financial community or industry? I would say more on a personal level. When we moved out to Cali, our second year, we moved into a bigger house. And that year, I said I wanted to learn as much as I could. And one of those things I wanted to learn more on was finances. So I got this book called I'll Teach You How to Be Rich by
Ramit Sethi.
Yeah, by that guy. And it was a phenomenal book. It taught me a lot of things that school didn't teach me, that I didn't learn from, my family or anything. And it taught me the best high interest saving accounts. It taught me about stocks. It taught me about everything we should be learning in school but didn't teach us. Mm-hmm. And I thought it was so good that I bought a copy for everybody in the group and gave it to them so they could learn too. And I told them the things I was doing from the book based on further research. So I think me being impeccable with my word and standing on my actions, they trusted me with, their finances and their financial decisions and their financial growth. So I think me doing my part and showing them led to them being able to trust my word.
Yeah, and that really helped me at the time because I was in the process of making my I was in the process of making my money plan, and so I was like, well, I read it in the book, but now let me see it kind of in action and see what my close friends are doing. So I went to Cam and I was like, yo, can you help me with this money plan? And he kind of broke his down, how he was doing his, and I was like, okay, now I can kind of see how the two correlate from the book to how he's doing it, and then I could do it, whatever way my spend is for my money plan. And so yeah, because he was responsible with his word, it really helped me at that time in my life to really dial in on the money plan and help invest in the future. So it was dope.
Okay. Question number 3. This one for you. What challenges have you faced in ensuring you always keep your promises, especially in financial dealings, and how did you overcome them?
I think one of the biggest challenges is managing the peaks. So I read a book called Peaks and Valleys by the same author who wrote Who Moved My Cheese, I believe. And in there, he pretty much just talks about how we get to a certain point and we have to realize that the polarity of life is always up and down. So no matter how much money you do have, there's going to be a time when there's going to be a season in the red. It ain't always going to be in the green. And if you don't manage your green season, then the valley is going to be much worse. So I had to, I wasn't used to getting a certain amount of money at the time, and it was coming in, and I was investing, but I wasn't keeping my word like I should have been. And because of that, my valley became a little bit lower than it needed to be, and I really sat back and was like, you know what? If I would have just done a little bit more managing of this peak, I wouldn't have to be here. And it's funny because you can just do a slight tweak of your managing your peak, and it can take you a long way. Yeah. So I think that was one of the biggest lessons is just biggest challenges in keeping my word is making sure that I manage my peak the right way to ensure that I have a better future. So
are you managing your peaks now?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Okay.
Can't go back there anymore.
I have another question for you.
Yeah.
Why do you believe that one's word is their bond, especially in the context of wealth building?
One's word is their bond in the context of wealth building is because I believe in this digital age, we have so much information out here, so many different people you can follow, so many different messages that you see, so many different like angles and ways that you can do stuff that you can kind of get lost in the sauce. And I think you have to look through all that to try to find the people with integrity that are going to really be doing this and really standing on their word to make sure that they're leading this generation of kids or even just the generation in period to the next best level. Because how you talk about finances to people, that gets ingrained in them. That's why we are now in a place where we are now as a community, because certain principles weren't passed down to us. And so if these bad principles are passed down to the next generation, it's just going to continue to be a cycle. So you want to find people that's really impeccable with their word, that are going to help like really push the generation forward.
And I think that's why we gravitated towards the Come Up series, because when we started following and watching all their content, we realized they were showing up every week, giving the community value without asking for anything in return outside of you just studying and following what they're teaching you. Mm-hmm. Like a lot of people that's doing the same thing they're doing, putting courses up or asking you got to pay to get in this Discord. And they was just doing it for the straight love and wanted to teach the community about stocks. Yep. So it was a lot of integrity in their actions that I could get behind and follow suit with. Mm-hmm. So shout out to them.
Shout out.
Question number 5, can you provide an example of a missed opportunity or setback because someone wasn't impeccable with their word? Yes, so for you that don't know, we're in a comedy collective called Dormtainment, and when we first came out here, we were heavy in the industry trying to get a show. So we got an opportunity with Comedy Central, and they said we can do a digital online pilot in their pilot program, and they say, if the numbers are right, and, it hits certain metrics that you have a great shot on getting the show, especially if you outperform the other shows. So we like, okay. So we shoot this pilot. It breaks the records on Comedy Central's digital platforms. We get the most traffic. We get the most comments. But after that happened, they said, well, let's see how your impact is in person. So they decided to come to one of our live shows that we were doing at a college. And luckily for us, it was one of the best shows we've had ever. And we even got a standing ovation, and they were there to see it. So we was like, we got this in the bag.
Pretty much.
So we come back. They say, okay, that was great. Everything you've been doing is great. Let's see how you can sell tickets, though, because the college show was through the college, so it was free for the students to come, and the college paid us. So we was like, okay. So we rented out the Gramercy in New York, and they also came to that, and we sold that show out, and we killed that show as well. So we was like, what can they say now?
Yeah.
We did everything they asked for and exceeded expectations, and they ended up going with another show that had lower ratings than ours, just because it had a star in there with a name. And that show had, I think, one season and got canceled. So they weren't impeccable with their word, but as we always say, it's a lesson. It's not a loss. So we learned from it and moved on. But we also realized you can't rely on other people. Sometimes you just got to do it yourself.
Yep.
So that was our 5 questions. Peace.
So what did we learn today? We learned that trustworthiness is its own form of currency. It can make or break a business. It can make or break your financial journey. Upholding our commitments can pave the way for opportunities that we've never even imagined. In our next episode, we will channel the spirit of resilience with our next principle, thou shalt let no thing stop thee. You will not let anything stop you. So stay with us on this enlightening wealth journey. Remember, at the end and the beginning of the day, your word is your bond. And bonds can be the strongest foundation of monumental success. Keep the promises you make to yourself and others. Stick with us, cousins, as we continue our journey, shedding light on principles that pave the path to our prosperity. This has been Jolyn. Just kidding.